Well, let's talk about that, because that's a good transition, because let's talk about business. Our topic today for business is actually based on trust. Again, I kind of did curate these things a little bit because it was a little bit on a bit of a theme. So I thought, why not carry it on? Yeah. So recently there was an article that spoke about QANTAS. So yes, we won't always be speaking about Australian politics and Australian businesses, but it just seemed that at the moment that QANTAS, they say that their morale is dropping, and they're threatening strikes and all that stuff that the unions do, but they're talking about all these challenges because all the workers are under great scrutiny. As we know, all the airlines during COVID, cut back on staff and everything like that. There were a lot of people that weren't employed or weren't being paid for a season, but stayed, stayed committed to the airlines. They specifically talk about the engineers that work on the plane, the most important people to make sure that the plane is safe. And these engineers all got their hours cut, their pay cut, like all their benefits cut, and like they struggled. They worked extra hours to make sure that the planes were safe and everything like that, even during these difficult times. And then there's this big uproar because now their CEO, and also all the executives and everything are all getting these multi-million-dollar bonuses and everything like that, while all the workers are being pressured and worked hard and cut wages and cut shifts and everything like that. Look, I have nothing wrong with executives being paid well. I've got nothing wrong with that. But how do you find that balance between paying executives at a level and all the workers underneath suffering and being paid less and having all their benefits taken and all that sort of stuff? Like how can we find that balance? Because I kind of look at it like, in one side I look at the engineers and go, yeah, I understand you're upset. They get these multi-million-dollar payouts or bonuses and stuff like that, and you guys are all struggling. But then I look at it and go, yeah, okay, so it's a few of them that got a couple of $1 million or whatever. If they were to spread that out amongst all the engineers, the engineers would have all got an extra $20 each or whatever. Like, so how do you find that balance between rewarding people at the right level and making sure, I suppose this is another point, is making sure, because I think this is one of the biggest challenges that most business owners and business leaders find, is they sacrifice themselves. They don't pay themselves well, but they pay their staff and everything like that. How do we find that balance between making sure that we pay ourselves and as leaders reward ourselves and compensate us for the sacrifice and the pressures and the stress that we have, while keeping the people we're leading happy and not feeling disgruntled because we got a bonus or we went on a holiday or we bought a new car or something?
I'll tell you what, you touched on a really, really big issue, and we could be here for a long time talking about this. I've taught in economics in a Christian higher education context. In business, we need to sell at a just price. And that means we need to be paying just wages and making a just profit. Now, it's easy to say that. Working it out in practice is very, very difficult. As you mentioned in the introduction, my background is in economics. I do actually think that markets on the whole do a pretty good job of settling those issues. They're not perfect, and some markets don't work all that well for various reasons. But generally speaking, because the market wage and the market price and therefore profit is really driven by productivity. That is how efficiently an operation is run and how efficiently workers actually contribute to the company and so on. So I think as a general principle, freely operating markets work fairly well to deliver justice in terms of business. Now, that's a generalization, and all sorts of things can intervene to actually undermine that, not the least of which is monopolies, not the least of which is either unions who are very powerful or bosses who are very powerful, because they can actually thwart, if you like, the forces of economics, the forces of the market that are at play. Now, I do know a little bit about airlines. I love aeroplanes. I've followed the fortunes of airlines over a long, long period of time. It's a very, very hard industry in which to make any profit at all. Margins are tiny. Look, if you're flying a jet aeroplane, say, between capital cities, state to state or whatever, you've really got to fill that aircraft before you can make a profit. So what you've got to do is you've got to fill every seat as best you can, carry as little fuel as you possibly can, because it is very, very expensive to carry fuel. It adds weight, but generates no revenue. So the margins are really, really thin. In the case of Qantas, their latest financial data was released just a little while ago. They actually made a loss in their last financial year of $860 million. So, getting up there towards $1 billion. Now, to be fair to Alan Joyce and those senior executives, during the COVID lockdowns, you might know that the Australian federal government closed our national borders, and that virtually brought international air travel to a halt. Even Australians who were trying to get home, they couldn't get home because there were no airlines flying. And if an airline did fly, they were charging very, very high prices, like tens of thousands of dollars to fly from, say, Europe back to Australia. So, and given that Qantas has, most of it, or a major part of its business involved in international flights, they were crippled. They lost a lot of money. Now, both he as CEO and the senior executives, for a time, they received no pay at all. They didn't receive any bonuses. So they kind of wore some of the pain themselves, and I think we should give them credit for doing that. The other thing is, and I think this is a big issue in big business in particular, because of the nature of the airline business, it's not a good market. The airline market isn't a good market because there's a lot of government interference. Most governments, financially and in a regulatory sense, support their national airlines. They subsidise them directly, or they organise the rules of flying to and from their countries in such a way as to favour their national airlines. So nothing in the airline industry really is determined purely by what we economists call market forces. There's a strong tendency in the airline industry to keep pushing costs down. And that's why you end up having some pretty serious disputes between the unions or the workers on the one hand and the bosses on the other. Now, you raised the case of the engineers. You need engineers. They do nearly everything, including making sure that if an oxygen mask falls down from overhead, that the jolly thing is going to work, right? So they've got to make sure they're properly stowed and certify that each one of these is going to work. And they've got to obviously certify that the plane is safe to fly. And in other words, until the plane gets in the air, essentially, your engineers are the most important people. Once it's in the air, of course, it's the pilots who've got to make all the decisions. But
the air hosts, because we need to be fed and we need a drink.
Well, yeah, that's important too, but it's even more important that you don't fall out of the sky. To be honest, as I understand it, the claim for wages they made, it was 12% over 4 years, it's actually more than that, because they were saying it's 3% a year. So when you compound that up, it's probably closer to 15%.
Yeah.
But given the current inflationary environment we're in, the likelihood that that's going to stick around for 3 or 4 years, personally, I don't think it's an outrageous claim at all. And I think, the airline should do all it can to try to meet that. But on the other hand, you've got a public that doesn't like increases in airfares. Airlines have got, they're facing much higher prices for their fuel, and that on its own, of course, is in large measure caused by government policies that are being implemented to deal with global warming, climate change as they call it these days. So the increases in fuel, which are very important to airlines, are largely caused by government policy in the first place. So the airline industry is a mess, really, and it's really difficult to apply that rule or let the market decide, because there's so much interference by governments. There are very few aircraft manufacturers in the world because it's so expensive to develop new models and so on. So there's a lot of pricing which is determined by things other than market forces. And so when that happens, there are many, many opportunities for justice to kind of fall by the wayside. I will say one thing though, and this is a reference to Southwest Airlines. Now, I haven't been following them closely in recent times, but I know that for their first 32 years of existence, they never failed to make a profit. And their long-term chair, and I'm sorry her name escapes me at the moment, but she said this: it's the job of the board to keep our staff happy, because if they're happy, our customers will be happy and the airline will thrive. And I do think there's a lot of wisdom in that. Now, you don't keep your staff happy just by giving them lots of money. Survey after survey has shown that, in fact, staff would give up some pay increases for other things which make them feel more important, more valued in the context of their work. And I think this is partly what the engineers union has been saying here in recent times. Our morale is at rock bottom because of the way we've been treated over the last period of years. And really, when it's widely known that a major objective of management is to drive down costs, it definitely has a morale effect. And then that flows through to the way in which staff actually interact with the public.
So how do we reconcile this as a leader? That obviously leading an organization, whether we're leading a business, leading a ministry, leading our family, we do have to manage costs. We need to be compensated, and as a leader, I think that a lot of the time, CEOs are, and leaders of organizations are kind of, they cop a brunt, the wrong end of the stick, so to speak, that they get paid so much, everything like that. But the value that they bring is immense. The pressure and the stresses, the hours that they put in, and the value that they bring to an organization, like someone like Alan Joyce, he has so much experience that he makes one decision and the organization will either make an extra $100 million or lose $100 million. So there's big pressures and big results. But how do we, and you've mentioned that, keeping staff satisfied is not just about the money. And that's a good point, because it kind of leads us on to a next point. But before we get on to that, how do we reconcile the fact that we are compensating ourselves, we're taking the time for ourselves as a leader, we're taking time off like we should, we look after our car and get a nice car and get a nice house, and we can live within the relevance of us talking about the sacrifices we need to make as a leader. But how do you reconcile that balance between making sure we compensate ourselves while keeping costs down in our organization or keeping to a budget and all of those kind of things?
Oh, look, whole university courses are designed around these kinds of questions. It's not something that we can deal with all that satisfactorily in a short period of time. But look, if your leadership context is ownership of a business, I think there are some principles we could apply in terms of your decision about how much to take out of the business, say each year or each quarter or whatever. Number one, you need to pay yourself a wage. In other words, you need to be compensated for the time and effort that you invest in running the business. And if I can share an anecdote, some people in my church came to me because they had an opportunity to buy a business. And look, I went around to the business and I sat there. It was actually a fast food service business. The place was immaculate. The current owner kept it absolutely immaculate. You could do open heart surgery there. It was so clean and everything was stainless steel and it was great. The staff were good. They obviously had pretty high morale. I didn't think the location was very good because it was tucked away at the back of a shopping centre and you'd have to find it rather than, it finding you, so to speak. Yeah. But anyway, we were able to get a look at the books and they were making a profit, right? And because the business is making a profit. And I sat down and said, yeah, but you know what? What that amounts to is that you and your wife together would be paying yourself a wage each year of $36,000. I said, don't buy the business. And my question to them was, would you, both of you, work full-time for somebody else for a joint salary of $36,000 a year? Of course not. So don't buy the business. So you, like in the early days, you might make a loss, but you need to make sure your business is earning enough to pay you the same kind of wage you could get with your skills and experience and qualifications working for somebody else. So that's one thing. The next thing, you may have actually put your own finance into the business, or you might have gone and borrowed from the bank. So you need to be paying yourself enough to meet either the equivalent interest on what loan you would have had to take out, or the loan that you actually have taken out. So you have to add that to a salary. And then in addition to that, of course, you need to add a premium, if you like, for the fact that you're a risk taker and that not all your risk is going to pay off. I've known many fine Christian people who have actually gone bankrupt at some stage in their career. And I don't believe it's because they fell into sin. I don't believe they were incompetent, but they made a decision which didn't work out for them in the market. And you might say, well, if you're led by the Holy Spirit, you'll never make a mistake. Maybe that's true. Maybe you can persuade me in that way, but you could also come under spiritual attack. The devil oppresses you. He's wanting to rob you of the blessings of your business and so on and so forth. And there are many reasons, but every decision we make doesn't pay off. And so you do actually need, as the leader who owns a business, you need to be drawing from that business not just the equivalent salary that you'll get somewhere else, not just an amount which is going to service the loan you either have or might have had, but instead put your own finance in. You need also to have a premium in there, which accounts for the fact that you're the one who's carrying the risk. Now, that's what I would say, that's a just profit, right? I think that's something you can easily justify. And if you're not actually making a profit that does those things, you really should look at whether you're running your business properly or that you should get out. And if you're making way above that, then maybe you're falling into one or two traps. Either you're exploiting your staff and you should be paying them more, or you're running the risk that you're actually making your business unsustainable into the future. So you need to balance those things. Now, it's more difficult. Sorry, you keep going.
I know. You finish your thought. I'm just
more difficult if you're not the leader and the owner. If you're working, say, as the CEO of a private company, or you've been employed as a manager by the owner, you don't have the same leverage in terms of making those decisions. But And if you're employed as a manager, you're not taking the risk that the owner takes, et cetera, but you should still ask yourself the question, am I being paid pretty much equivalent to what I could be paying if I went and worked for somebody else? That I think gives you a bit of a handle on whether or not you're being paid justly.
That's good. It kind of reminds me of a conversation that we had, I'd like to say recently, but I don't know how long ago it was that we had this conversation, but, about being paid too much. These executives, they're paid a lot, and there's a lot of money that flows around, and obviously it can be justified because of the value that they bring. But we've spoken about this. You as a board member of the organization, I came to you and I said, how do I make sure that I'm not chasing the money? Because obviously we're a very missional based business. We are a for-profit business, but we're very missionally based. We give away our training for free and everything like that. And so we're very missionally focused on our mission to eradicate poor leadership by raising up the next generation of influential leaders. Just to throw that in there again. But, we're a for-profit business, and I believe that this will be extremely successful. How do I make sure we stay focused on the mission and not be drawn to the money? And we came up with the idea, and something that's done quite often is you just predetermine how much you need to earn. And like so we've made an agreement, as directors and me as the CEO of the organization and the managing director. I said, look, this is how much I need to earn per year, and I'm happy with that. No matter how big the organization gets, how successful it gets, I'm able, and we agreed on an amount, and I actually said a lower amount. You're like, actually, no, you probably will deserve and need more than that. So we adjust that, and that's our set goal, and that's all I need. And so that enables me to ensure that I can stay focused on our mission, but also continue to grow and be successful in the organization and funnel all of the funds back into the mission, fund it back into employing our enough staff so that staff aren't overworked, paying them correctly, training them, giving them the training and the skill and upskilling them and the support and the equipment that they need, so they'll have the right tools and everything like that. And spending more money on marketing to expand the mission and everything like that. So I think that's kind of, I would say, one of the goal or one of the main things that I would say in this, in this story about QANTAS is maybe as a leader, predetermine how much you actually need. Obviously, account for inflation and all those sorts of things, but make it amount. Pick a number and just go, well, my life would be amazing if we had this much. Set it and just go, that's how much we need to earn as a family and to achieve all the things, send the kids to school and to save for the future and buy a home and all those basic things that you need. But if you're able to focus on, set that aside and then focus on the mission instead of the money, then it doesn't become a point of, oh, well, I'm going to pay more and I'm going to buy another expensive car and I'm going to do this. And then your staff are going, what about us? I think that if we can set something reasonable with wise counsel, which is, part of the reason why I have a board of directors is so that you guys can, give me wise counsel around things, that it's not just me being a maverick and me, serving my own self. And get yourself some wise counsel, get yourself advisors, get yourself coaches or whatever that can help guide you and make those decisions. Preset it so that when you are making $1 million a year or maybe a month or whatever your business is making, it's no longer an issue because it's already been predetermined. Hey, you just watched an excerpt from our On the Cube Leadership podcast. If you'd like to see the full episodes, check out our YouTube channel and consider subscribing.